Hi, this is Custom Works. I'm Clint Allen. Have you got a code for the wastegate control valve? Have you got a code for a overboost code? Have you been having turbo issues? Well, stick around. You doing?
It's supposed to be
Well, thanks for hanging around through that. Today we're going to be talking about the wastegate control valve. Now, the wastegate control valve, with information from the other engine sensors, gathered information into and through the PCM, opens the wastegate on the turbo. Codes in the PCM would be gathered as a PC wastegate failure or a P1249 wastegate steady state failure. Now, if you have a overboost code, we're going to be covering that in a separate video in the future. But this also could be part of it, so stick on in there. First and foremost, if you have a tune in the computer or you have a chip, what we must do is remove that, get it out of there, return it back to stock, and after we have the problem fixed, then we'll reinstall that tune or put that chip back in. Now, if you remove these two items and you wipe the computer and the code doesn't come back, well, we found the problem. You've got a sloppy tune or a messed up PCM. Location of this wastegate control valve is going to be on the Y pipe, or some people call it the X pipe, or the intake manifold. All depends on what your jargon is for this. For diagnosis, let's first check that the wastegate itself isn't stuck or frozen up. And in the back, you'll see a video showing real quick on how to test that wastegate on the turbo. Now, the system does not work on vacuum. What it does is it works on pressure from the air intake. So by pressuring the wastegate itself, that'll open up the blow valve in the exhaust side of the turbo, and also can be a chance that the flapper in the turbo also could be gummed up and stuck open or stuck closed, throwing a overboost code as well. Now, things that we want to check initially is we've got the red and green tube. That green tube hooks up to the air intake. That comes over to the wastegate control valve, and then it jumps from there over to the back of the, on the red line, to the back of the turbo wastegate itself. So we want to check to make sure that these lines are not kinked. We want to make sure that they blow some air in them, make sure that there's nothing caught inside these tubes. The little rubber connectors on these tubes, make sure that they're not cracked. In a situation that I ran into in the past, let's make sure that when you worked on the vehicle, that these tubes were actually put back on the wastegate control valve correctly. You know, if you're moved over just a little bit, it's not going to be working properly. It's going to be missing the tube that it should be hooked into, so let's make sure it's hooked in correctly. Let's make sure that the wires are good. Let's make sure that the connector is good. A lot of time on the age of these vehicles, once again, where the wire goes into the actual connector before you plug it into the sensor, sometimes right there is where that wire breaks. And once again, I've harped over time that you might want to go out and get yourself a brand spanking new wire harness for the top of the motor. You know, these units are 20, 30 years old. If you throw one of these codes and you want to test it, All we really want to do is just do a simple continuity test. Make sure that you're getting some kind of small resistance indicating that the control valve itself isn't open. If you do get some resistance, there might be problems further on. But basically, if there is a zero reading, you know, no resistance whatsoever, the valve is probably stuck open. And you know, this is a simple one. If you got the P1690 or the P1249 code, pretty much you can be assured that the wastegate control valve is junk, and you know, this is easy to get at. It's not a cost a fortune. You know, pull it off of there, put a brand new one back on. Now it's very, very important here, critical, that when you pull your wastegate control valve off, there is a number on it, and when you go, whether it's to a diesel site or to Ford, that number matches or cross-references with the new one. There are some minor variations throughout the years on these. Another situation is that there is no cheap aftermarket ones. Basically, you'll have to go to Ford or a reputable diesel site. You're not going to end up with a situation where there's, you know, a $10 one out there, which I would never suggest any sensor to go aftermarket with anything cheap. But in this particular case, you're not going to have much choice. You're going to have to step up and get the Ford or a decent one from the diesel sites, or hit the old Google machine and order your one, you know, that way. So now after replacement, basically clear the cell code, run it for a while, and life should be good. I mean, it's just that simple. But if you do run into a situation where the light pops back on again, you need to make sure you did your due diligence and going through everything that we just previously discussed. Now with this sensor here, you know, in the days that we're living in, sometimes we don't have that extra cash. So in the short, basically, if you have to wait a few days or wait till you get your paycheck, you're cool. The truck isn't going to blow up as long as we're going to drive it conservatively and immediately get the part once the cash is available to you. And there's nothing more to hit on than that. So I hope you've learned something today, and you take it easy and you have a good day.